Good evening. We welcome you to tonight's debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the University of Scranton's Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service. My name is Diana Dakey. I am a board member of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County, and I will be this evening's moderator. A few words about the League. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, which means that we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation by citizens in their government. We encourage you to join the League. Membership information can be found in your program, or you can go to our website, which is at the web address is printed in your program. About the Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service. The Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service, CEEPS, CEEPS, endeavors to promote the common good through programs that support the development of ethical and competent public officials and of civically knowledgeable, responsible, and engaged community members. CEEPS provides resources for students, governing officials, and community members seeking education, training, or opportunities related to public service. I want to thank Joanna Hopper, the director of CEEPS, for her efforts towards tonight's debate. Electric City TV is taping tonight's debate. This is not a live broadcast. The taped debate will be aired on Comcast 19 local TV, so please check the ECTV schedule, which can be found in your program. The taped debate will also be available on YouTube via links from the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County's website and the CEEPS website. A few procedural items for the audience. Please do turn off or silence your cell phones or other devices. Please refrain from expressions of support, opposition, approval, or disapproval throughout the debate. Hold your applause until after each candidate has given his closing statement. Then you may applaud. I will cue you at that time. Anyone causing a disturbance will be asked to leave the event, but we don't anticipate that. Please be aware that it is our policy that no person, candidate, or political group is allowed to use or edit any media from a League of Women Voters sponsored event for any campaign purposes. Any use of the media requires the express written approval of our League. No excerpts or sound bites may be taken from tonight's debate. So tonight's debate offers an opportunity for voters to learn about the candidates running for the Pennsylvania 112th House District, so that you, the voters, can make informed choices at the polls on Tuesday, November 8th. After the recent redistricting, the 112th now consists of the city of Carbondale, the townships of Carbondale, Fell, and Jefferson, the boroughs of Archbald, Blakely, Dunmore, German, Jessup, Mayfield, Oliphant, Troop, and Vandling. The questions I will ask the candidates were developed by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service. No candidate has had any knowledge of the questions ahead of time. Both candidates will respond to the same questions. They will have 2 minutes to answer each question unless I specify otherwise. We do have some short answer questions. Kevin Nordberg, thank you, Kevin, will be our timer this evening, and he will hold up for the candidates to see a sign when they have 30 minutes remaining. When time is up, he will hold up a sign indicating that they need to stop. And then each candidate has 3 one-minute rebuttal opportunities. So if a candidate wants to respond to an answer given by his opponent, he just needs to ask for a rebuttal. After all the questions have been asked and answered, each candidate will have 2 minutes to deliver a closing statement. So candidates drew lots to determine who would answer the first question, and we will rotate in a round robin fashion from that. The candidates are seated in alphabetical order from left to right, as is our League custom, and I will introduce the candidates in alphabetical order. Kyle J. Mullins advanced from the Democratic primary. He is a resident of Peckville. graduate of Valley View High School in the class of 2003, and Westchester University of Pennsylvania, the class of 2007, with a Bachelor of Science in Political Science. His public office experience is that of Pennsylvania State Representative for the 112th District, elected in 2018. His employment history includes, prior to being a state representative, being the legislative director for Senator John Blake from 2011 to 2018, a legislative assistant to State Senator Mike Stack from 2009 to 2011, and a State Senate research analyst from 2007 to 2009. His civic and volunteer experience includes being a board member to the American Cancer Society and an agency for community empowerment. William Torbeck advanced from the Republican primary. He is a resident of Dunmore. He is a 1982 graduate of Scranton Technical High School, and he worked as an apprentice in the building trades. He has not held public office, but he ran, although unsuccessfully, for Dunmore School Board as a Dunmore School Board Director in 2021. For employment as a contractor at Toby Hanna, he has over 15 years of experience providing satellite communication technology for our armed forces. He served as an elected union steward for the local IAM and was a member of the negotiating committee. For civic experience, he volunteered in the Dunmore Neighborhood Crime Watch. He coached and organized basketball for church leagues and did volunteer work with raising future assistance dogs through the puppy prison program for our veterans. So now on to our questions. So per our drawing, Kyle Mullins will answer first, please. Okay. This is a question about priorities. Please share with us what you believe are the top 3 priorities for Pennsylvania today that the state legislature can and should address. Kyle?
Thank you very much. It's an excellent question. And first and foremost, I want to thank you, the League of Women Voters and the University of Scranton for hosting us, and my opponent, Mr. Bill Torbeck, for agreeing to this debate, and for everyone here for being civically engaged in your own free time on a school night. Our priorities in the state legislature and in the voting booth should be about our pocketbooks. It should be about our economy. And we are absolutely experiencing a tough economy right now. But we have solutions in the hopper, and we have solutions that I've been proud to support and vote in favor of that can absolutely transform Pennsylvania, make us more competitive in the national and international stage as far as creating jobs and attracting employers to come here. When I first ran for this office, I said one of the major things we need to do to let businesses know that Pennsylvania is open for business was lower our incredibly high corporate net income tax. I casted a vote, and I'm proud of it, this past budget to do just that. I've said that we need to increase our commitment to public education, not only to alleviate the pressure on property taxpayers, but to make sure that our children are emerging into the market, into the job market, and into the future with the skills necessary for the employers who are telling us that we have these skills gaps and we are not filling them fast enough. I'm proud of our accomplishments, but I'm also rededicating myself tonight and in this race to these priorities.
Well, thank you very much for coming out tonight, Kyle. Very appreciated, and thank you everybody for coming out. Let's get right down to it. Priorities, energy, energy, and energy, okay? Your real leadership, as your sign says, and your answer doesn't really reflect this. I've been knocking doors, and our citizens in the 112 informed me some of them are paying for $5.79 for a gallon of oil. I haven't heard that price in my life, and I've been around longer than he has. So that being said, energy, energy, energy. We have the untapped resources in this state, which we must untap right now. There's a lot of people going to be hurt over the next few years. We're not in a good situation right now, folks. We need to tap into our resources. And the priority is energy right now.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. So this one is about your approach to your office of being a legislator. And William Torbeck, you will answer first. So the question, how will you decide your vote for or against any given bill, be it legislation or a constitutional amendment? Will you vote according to local constituent concerns, statewide citizen concerns, as asked by party leadership, or the agenda of a national party? Would you vote for a bill being advanced by the other party or some independent organization? So please explain your approach to how you will operate as a
I
legislator.
didn't really hear the question there.
Yeah, so the question is, how will you decide your vote for or against any given bill or legislation? What will influence your decision?
What is best for the citizens of the 112th, our neighbors, what is best for them? I would be an independent vote, and my interests are the citizens of the 112 at first. Whatever is the betterment of the citizens of Lackawanna County is what my concern is. That's the top priority. No, I know the vote in the House is a representative of the whole state, but my main concern is what's in my backyard, what's in our backyard. So, you know, I know we have to consider everyone in the state, but what's best for our citizens in Lackawanna County would be the priority.
Thank you. And Kyle, would you please address that question?
Sure. I'm proud of my experience in rendering judgment on behalf of the 112th District, the great people who live and work there and raise their families there. And I'm as active in the community as I can be. I have a tremendous team of coworkers in my district office as well as in my Harrisburg office. We respond as promptly and as thoroughly as we can to their concerns, to their questions, even when we disagree. They know where I stand, and I allow for an audience and a thoughtful back and forth. You know, you must remain true to yourself, and when you're elected to represent this many people, 65,000 people, you must remain connected to their priorities. I'm proud that my voting record has reflected that. A voting record of balance, a voting record that didn't always, you know, that I strayed from party politics, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the ability and my convictions to remain true to myself and the people I represent in casting those votes on the House floor. And I look forward to doing it again. Mary Butt.
Yes.
If it's the best interest, Kyle, I'd like to know your vote that you took in April, fairness in women's sports, and you voted no on that. Could you explain that to the folks, of the citizens of Pennsylvania and our local citizens? Because fairness in women's sports, we're supposed to protect our women, and you voted no. If that was the best interest of women, or was that in the best vote of, you know, who was that in the best vote of?
You may choose to use one of your rebuttals, or you may address that topic later on.
I'll cash one in right now.
You'll cash one in right now, okay.
My opponent has clearly dedicated a ton of effort to a wedge issue, to an issue that is intended to divide people, to make people afraid of something they don't understand. An issue that is not a widespread issue or on the minds of our average citizens day in and day out, simply trying to make ends meet, to make sure that their loved ones are healthy, to make sure that they can afford childcare, to make sure, if we want to talk about fairness, that there is fairness in how we educate our children and how we fund those schools. Do you know that transgender individuals are 52% more likely to attempt suicide? And they're 4 times more likely to attempt it?
I don't think you answered the question, Kyle.
My focus has and will continue to be on issues that affect
Okay, well, I don't think you answered the
our
question.
citizens
Thank you.
on a
Thank you,
daily
candidates.
basis.
Let's move on to.
But I'm sure we'll be back at it.
We have, we're ready for the next question. And this one will be answered first by Kyle Mullins. This is a question about mail voting. In 2019, the legislature passed, and it became Act 77, legislation to allow voting by mail in addition to the existing absentee ballot process. That process had required the voter to state a reason. So many voters took advantage of the vote by mail method. Do you support the continuation of voting by mail? Why or why not? Kyle, please.
Thank you. The Act 77, which I voted for, was a Republican-led bill signed by a Democratic governor, and it was another instance which I didn't vote in the identical way of my fellow Democrats. We were a divided caucus over the matter. However, I believed that whenever we have the opportunity to include more people in our electoral process, that's a good thing. Not everyone has a shift, a work shift in which they can get to the polls. Not everyone has childcare coverage in which they can get to the polls. Not everyone has that ability. So I don't understand the problem with the secure manner and method that was established, again, driven by majority Republicans. Aspect of that bill that I agreed with strongly was no excuse, absentee, mail-in voting, mail-in ballots. So I am strongly supportive of ever-increasing numbers of people participating, even when the polls open from 8 to 7 that day might not be convenient. The more people engaged in our process, the better our democracy is.
Well, we had apparently 81 million votes for the President of the United States, which was a record amount. Okay, so I don't know how there was trouble anybody getting out to vote, so it sounds like we had enough people getting out. I think it was 74 million people voted for Donald Trump. Let's get to the mail-in ballot, where we're at today, folks. When you go to vote in person, you are matched to a signature, okay? When as you are voting in person, you're matched to a name and an address. The mail-in voting, as you're voting here, you're getting a vote counted through mail-in voting that doesn't have a verified signature. It doesn't have a date on a return envelope. And look at what we just saw in the news last week. A total defiance of the Supreme Court decision for the return envelope to have a date on it. And Tom Wolf's Secretary of State the next day came out and said they were going to follow their own guidelines. It's just a repeat of 2020, and you have to, if real leadership was going to happen here, Kyle, you would have spoke out against that. You would have denounced that that statement that she made. I believe her name was Chapman, Miss Chapman, Secretary Chapman. The next day she came out and said they're going to follow their own guidelines and we'll see you in court. There is no voter integrity in the state of Pennsylvania right now with mail-in voting, folks. Act 77 needs to be ripped apart. It should have been handled through a constitutional amendment. The Republicans were wrong for doing it, and I don't agree with your vote for it. So that's where we're at. We are voter integrity. You would get rid of this.
Thank you. I just want to do a little sound check. I hear a little bit of an echo up here, but is the audience okay with the sound?
Closer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
louder, yes.
Okay, but are you okay with the sound over here?
can hear that,
Okay,
yeah.
because from over here, okay. Thank you, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next question, William Torbeck will answer first, please. And this question is about early canvassing. So early canvassing of mail ballots, which occurs in most states, is an opportunity for county voting offices to begin counting mail-in and absentee ballots before Election Day. And county elections directors have asked to be able to do this. Would you sponsor, co-sponsor, or vote for state legislation that mandates or allows pre-canvassing of mail-in and absentee ballots? Why? If not, why not?
I'd certainly consider the legislation as long as the count is observed by people who have been educated on the election process. I'd certainly consider supporting that, supporting early canvassing and early counting. Sure, as long as the public is aware of it. The public should be educated on something like that, and it shouldn't be something that rushed forward. I certainly consider legislation to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
To you, Kyle, please,
Sure.
on early canvassing?
The short answer is yes, and I voted in favor of that unfortunately failed amendment shot down at the hands of my opponent's party in the State House. Again, after the chaos that ensued after how long it took to count certain counties' ballots over the prior election, we Democrats offered and asserted that we should allow for the pre-canvassing to begin to alleviate that. Unfortunately, what we have here is a Republican Party with buyer's remorse. They thought they got one up on us, folks. They got rid of the straight party ticket in exchange for mail-in balloting. And then they saw, wow, a whole bunch of people got to participate who didn't participate in our elections before, and they weren't happy with the outcome. So now, since they have this buyer's remorse, egg on their face, their only fallback or recourse is chaos. The chaos that ensues after not knowing the outcome of any number of elections for days, if not weeks. The canvassing concept is something that could alleviate that, and that was unfortunately shot down when we, in the minority, proposed that as a solution. Thank you for your input.
Okay, the next question, Kyle Mullins will answer this first. This has to do with gifts to legislators. Pennsylvania has no limits on what gifts or items of value may be given to a sitting legislator by a lobbyist or individual. Many have likened this situation to legalized bribery. Bipartisan gift ban legislation has been proposed, but can't seem to get across the finish line with a floor vote in the legislature. Several legislators in their individual capacities have said they will decline gifts, but until leadership asserts likewise, the problem persists. Will you advocate to leadership to bring this up for a vote? Kyle first, please.
I have, and I will. I've never accepted a gift. I'm not sure who is accepting gifts, but I agree wholeheartedly that legislators should not be accepting gifts from anyone in their lives other than their loved ones who are here with me today, and but Christmas is quite far away. But as it relates to, on a very serious matter of gifts and influence to legislators, that is a proposal I would support if given the opportunity. We've dared them time and again to bring it for a vote. I hope I'm serving when we are able to make one of these major leaps in government reform. As it relates to other, first and foremost, my vote is not and never has been for sale because of any relationship or meeting. So that is why I am absolutely in favor of going above and beyond gift bans, campaign finance reform, and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you. William Torbeck.
I would not take any gifts. The salary is quite substantial for state legislators, which are part-time. The per diem, I mean, the travel, it's got to be tough, going to Harrisburg back and forth in all crazy kind of weather, so I respect that, certainly. The per diem, but no gifts, and I also noticed the last raise that the legislature got, which I believe was about an $8,000 raise per year. Was that about right? $8,000 a year? So the latest raise that the legislature in Harrisburg got, I would say I wouldn't tell it where you are right now. I would want to donate my salary to our veterans, and I'm committed to that.
Thank you. Okay, so now I have two questions about abortion. So the first one is a short answer question. So you'll just give a short answer. And then the second question is one in which you may elaborate on your position. So for the short answer question, William Torbeck will go first. Senate Bill 106, which passed the General Assembly in July, contained amendments to the state constitution. And these amendments may be presented to you, should you be elected, for a vote in the 2023 legislative session, as that would be the next step toward amending the state constitution. So I'm going to ask you your position on the amendment related to abortion. It reads, "The Constitution does not grant the right to taxpayer-funded abortion or any other right relating to abortion." Now, should this amendment come up for a vote in the next legislative session, do you support or oppose this amendment to the state constitution? Be aware that although there are two provisions in this one statement, legislators may be asked to vote on it as written. So the question is, how will you vote? Please answer with a simple support or oppose. William Torbeck.
No taxpayer funding for abortions. So.
The statement, do you support or oppose the statement as written?
I would support it.
Okay. Kyle Mullins, please.
Oppose.
Okay. So now here's the longer question. And then this one, we have Kyle Mullins going first. What legislation related to the provision of abortion health care services do you support or not support? The question, it's a broad question related to, could be expansion, could be restriction. What legislation related to the provision of abortion health care services do you support or not support? Kyle Mullins.
This is a tough issue for so many, and it is, and the solutions and convictions and bases for all of our personal and public policy positions on it are quite varied. I don't support expanding abortion access beyond current Pennsylvania law. You know, when our doctor came in to the room where my wife and I were waiting after our 20-week ultrasound with our daughters during our daughter's pregnancy, and he shared with us the terrifying diagnosis of her fetal heart condition and just how high risk her pregnancy would be. The last thing in the world that we needed in that room was the opinion of politicians.
Okay,
So, Kyle, you voted no on to prohibit abortions for Down syndrome babies, okay? That to me is quite disturbing. We protect life. We should protect life. I will protect life. Yes, a woman protecting the life of a woman if there's an emergency, absolutely, absolutely. I can understand with exceptions, but we should be protecting life. The mother's baby in the womb should be protected. You know, in the Constitution, in our Declaration, it doesn't say right to choose, it says the right to life. I see abortion as a rejection of our Declaration of Independence. And I think the Declaration of Independence in the greatest country in the world is disrespected when we hear the right to choose. We have a right to life in this country, and we should protect it.
thank you.
If I could.
A rebuttal? Okay, Kyle Mullins, go ahead.
My opponent mentioned exceptions, certain exceptions. The content of Senate Bill 106, that was the basis of the prior question, and will come before the State House and the State Senate this coming session, particularly if the majority party holds, will have to come in identical form to that as it passed last session. I haven't checked back in the language in a couple weeks, but I didn't see exceptions in there. So which one is it?
I would certainly say exceptions, because I'd have to look at the legislation, if the legislation's there, but sure, exceptions, absolutely. The mother's life is in danger, but let's get right down to the brass tacks here. I mean, how many pregnancies out of the 63 million since 1972 have been exceptions? Very few, very, very few. That's the reality. Unfortunately, we don't have a free and fair press that informs people of that. So, exceptions, sure,
Okay.
sure, absolutely.
Okay, candidates, please, we do have a rebuttal process. 1 minute is allowed, and so please allow each person rebutting their full 1 minute. So you've both used a rebuttal on that topic. Thank you, and we'll move on. The next question is related to the procedure used for constitutional amendments in the state of Pennsylvania. So the final step to amend the state constitution is to place a ballot question before voters in a normally scheduled election, could be May or November. The May primary election turnout is much lower than the November election turnout. Voters, and then there are voters who do not vote in the primary, those voters who are neither registered Republican or registered Democrats. And they may not even realize they should go to the polls if a constitutional amendment is run in May. And then the result could be that fundamental changes to our state government via the Constitution may be decided by as few as 20% of voters. And we know that there is the potential for ballot questions in May of 2023, including the abortion one. Do you support or oppose placing constitutional amendments before voters in a primary election? Why or why not? So William Torbeck, please answer first.
I would certainly consider legislation that would open up our primaries to independents. Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely.
Excuse me. I do have a question later on about that, but this question is about the timing of running the ballot questions. Are you in favor of running them in May or running them in running them in November?
Running them in the general, yes, absolutely. Run them in the general, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'd certainly consider, I'd want to look at the legislation in front of me and learn more about it. But yeah, and keep it in the general, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank you.
Kyle Mullins, please, on how the state offers ballot questions to voters, May or November. How should the state proceed to offer ballot questions?
Sure. I mean, this goes back to my philosophy and my My conviction about the more people who participate and whose voices are heard in our democracy, the better. What we've seen over the last few number of years is an end around the standard legislative process. The Republican majorities, fed up and tired with running into vetoes of some really bad public policy, simply started just amending the Constitution. And that should not be taken lightly, and in fact, it should be held in elections where there is the most participation possible.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we have a question about firearms, guns, firearms. So each individual right must be balanced against our government's obligation to ensure domestic tranquility and protect life. And so it is with firearms. In view of one tragedy after another caused by individuals using firearms, various states have enacted legislation that will cut down on the frequency and scale of these acts of violence. Some reforms include banning bump stocks, limiting sales of high-capacity magazines, expanding background checks to private sales, red flag laws. A recently introduced bill in the Pennsylvania House would require background checks for ammunition purchases. So there's no lack of suggestions. Are there Pennsylvania-specific gun-related measures that you would like to see advanced through the legislature? And for this question, Kyle Mullins, please go first.
Okay. Listen, everybody has a right to keep and bear firearms, to protect their life and property. I'm surrounded in my life by responsible gun owners, who I know with certainty are just that, responsible gun owners, who view irresponsible gun ownership as a threat to their law-abiding ownership of their firearm. And I also know that we just put our son on the bus for the first time this fall to go to school. And we've seen far too many incidences recently when a normal day to school didn't end that way. It ended with a gaping hole for parents and family members that can never be filled. To say that someone's right to bear arms, even a documented dangerous individual's right to possess a firearm, outweighs the right of a loved one to go to the grocery store and come home safely, to go to school and come home safely. I don't buy it.
Every individual has a right to protect themselves. Everyone does. You have the right to protect your family. You have the right to protect yourself and your property. Shall not be infringed. Kyle got an F on the Gun Owners of America. I was endorsed by the Gun Owners of America. Why don't we start locking up the violent gun offenders who reoffend and reoffend? It's called tough on crime, okay? Mental illness check, mental illness. If you want to start opening up lists, government lists, we wash away our due process. And it's already happening, folks. Everyone has a right to bear arms. Every right shall not be infringed means something. It means something. And we can go on here about the sad stories about the gun violence, but how about we start blaming the people who have these guns in their hands who are reoffenders? Let's start locking them up. We have a civil society that's becoming unhinged right now. We see the deaths of police officers over last weekend who were ambushed. Do you think they were legal guns? Do you think they were? I don't think so. I think these were criminals probably already that reoffended over and over. So our civil society is becoming unhinged because we're disarming. I mean, where do we see the gun control? We see gun control in our malls, in our schools. There's gun control, folks.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is about preemption. William Torbeck will be answering first. So state preemption laws establish state authority over local government authority in a particular area of regulation. For example, the Pennsylvania legislature has preempted municipal gun laws with the Pennsylvania Uniform Firearms Act, which says that municipalities cannot enact their own gun laws. The legislature attempted to preempt municipal regulation of the sale of soda and tobacco, the use of plastic bags, and building codes for new construction. Such state preemption typically occurs after lobbying by large, well-funded industries. Should the Pennsylvania state legislature preempt local government laws that local officials perceive to be in their community's best interests? Please explain your position.
The state legislature is there for a reason. Our constitutional system is in place for a reason to keep a civil society together. There should be no preemption. The state legislature makes the laws, and that's the way our constitutional system works. There should be no preemption, no. Because Philadelphia is a bigger city, and they should have something, they should have their own say-so. No, I don't think so. The state legislature, our state constitution is in order, and it's in place, and it's been effective for the last 250 some years. So no, I don't believe in preemption.
So I just wanted to clarify that you are not in favor of, or you are in favor of state laws overriding local
Yes.
municipal laws.
Right, correct.
Okay.
There's no local municipalities
Okay.
do not have no constitutional right to pass their own laws. So that's, it should be all on the lines of the state legislature. I mean, we have city council, borough councils, township supervisors, and councils that do pass their own ordinances, but it should be in line with the state legislature.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so then on to Kyle Mullins, please, about state preemption laws.
In the state I grew up in the state I know, we have a tradition, a history, a construct of around local control. We have locally elected school board members, borough council persons, township supervisors, for a reason. We give them, by the fabric and writing of our Constitution, give them legislative authority within their own purview. And, the conservatives will often tout the value and the importance of local control until they don't like something that the locals did. So we got to pass a law to swoop in and take away that local control. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it that way when you simply just don't like or agree with that local law. I know and appreciate so many individuals who put their name on the ballot for often thankless jobs they're often not compensated for, to school board or their municipal council, and get hounded at the grocery store worse than we at the legislative level do, because those are really hard decisions. And I, as a state lawmaker, refuse to infringe on their authority.
Could I rebut, please?
Absolutely.
There's a House bill, Kyle, 2023, that required legislative authority before entering into a state compact, such as RGGI. Why didn't you want the legislative body to be involved in a decision like that, to go into such a questionable agreement, which would cost our citizens in the 112 more energy prices, the cap and trade, which you'd want to tax carbon? Maybe you can explain that to the citizens.
Okay, as a point of order, Kyle Mullins, you have one rebuttal left. You may speak to that topic now. I do have a topic coming up about environmental protection.
Yeah, I'll cover that in any energy topic come up.
Thank you, William Torbeck, for that point. Okay, so now we have a question about opening Pennsylvania primaries to unaffiliated voters. So Pennsylvania is one of only 9 states that still hold closed primaries in which only voters registered with the Democratic or Republican parties may vote for their party's candidate in a primary. So this leaves out close to 1 million voters statewide who are not registered with the Republican or Democratic Party, and they therefore have no say in what candidates will appear on the November ballot. So bills have been regularly introduced to allow unaffiliated voters to go to the polls for the primary and request to vote on either the Republican or Democratic ballot. And in these bills, registered Republicans and Democrats would still vote as they do now. This arrangement is called a semi-open primary. Would you sponsor, co-sponsor, or vote for a semi-open primary law? And please provide your rationale for your answer. So we are now looking for Kyle Mullins to answer first.
I would favor the opening of our primary system. Again, it goes back to, the rationale is simple. It goes back to the common refrain: the more people who participate and feel welcome in our process, the better off we are.
I couldn't imagine a mail-in voting being ran efficiently in a primary. I mean, we're having a lot of trouble now as we speak. Would I consider legislation to opening up the primary to independents? Sure. In 2010, I joined a party because I wanted to vote in a primary in 2010. And the reason I joined a party was because I didn't agree with the Affordable Care Act. I didn't agree with the Affordable Care Act. I don't think the government should be telling me I have to buy a product. That's why I joined a party. But anyway, I would certainly consider legislation that would open up the primary to independents. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you both for your answers. We now have a question about renewable energy and natural gas. So this question is not about oil or gasoline, okay? So specifically, the question is about gas as it is now used for power generation, home heating, and some industrial processes. With gas being increasingly traded as an international commodity and the price of gas having risen, and along with that, the price of gas-powered electricity, many analysts have said that true energy independence means renewable energy. Do you agree with this statement? And how can Pennsylvania advance renewable energy such as solar, wind, or geothermal? So for this question, William Torbeck first, please.
Our technology is not there right now at this point for wind and solar. It's a very minute fraction of our energy right now. The safest way to transport our energy, liquid natural gas, is through the pipelines. It's best for the environment. It's better than the coal. We got the technology for mining coal has gotten so much more advanced. Like I said, right now, solar and wind is the technology's not there. And for government to force us into this and the destruction of our economy, as we see, by getting rid of fossil fuels, so many people are going to be hurt and dislocated by this preposterous war on our energy. As I said, liquid natural gas through the pipelines. We have one of our governors, one governor, one candidate supports the Pennsylvania Energy Initiative, which runs a pumping station from Pittsburgh, runs the pipeline to Erie and Philadelphia, and our NATO countries already asked about our energy in this state, which would be an economic boom to feed our NATO countries instead of going to Russia. So right now, the wind and solar, the technology is just not there. Am I against it? Not at all, not at all. But the government shouldn't be forcing us into this. It's hurting so many people, and our economy's taking a hit, as we all know.
Okay, question goes to Kyle Mullins, please.
You know, we're at a point where we're experiencing stronger and stronger storms, isolated rain events, hurricanes of Category 3 and 4 strength are now happening on the regular, and life and property are at risk, and nations around the globe are feeling the effects, the man-made effects of our impact on our environment. These can't be reversed or stopped in one fell swoop or with one policy. But it would be a sin not to try. Of course, I come home and I flip my light switch on and I'm thankful for it, and the gas stove works, and the heat comes on in a gas as we are gas customers. I understand the value of this resource that we are rich in and have in our back door in Pennsylvania. We should be proud of the workers who work in the fields and continue to provide this natural resource. But when we have the opportunity to make electricity from that, we need to make sure that the infrastructure and the plants that create that electricity are paying their fair share at the local level, and that we have minimum host standards and environmental protections included and guaranteed by the industry. I also support opening the Pennsylvania Alternative Energy Portfolio Standards to analyze and increase all of the above energy opportunities to find out exactly how we could be meeting our demand.
Thank you very much. I guess that was the timer. Okay, now the next question, Kyle Mullins will answer first. So this is about school funding. So school funding has come under scrutiny from a number of angles. The inequality of state funding to various districts, mandated services that burden districts unequally, property tax burdens, and more. As a legislator, how would you go about addressing this multifaceted problem? Kyle Mullins first, please.
Thank you very much. And this has been a longstanding issue long before I came into the legislature, but from the very beginning, it's been one of my top priorities, because our children's education, the quality of their schools should not, and the safety of those school buildings should not be determined by their zip code. We shouldn't be funding one child's experience and, frankly, their future more or less because of what school district they live in. Now, for a number of years, as the state retreated from adequately funding our public education system, which, if we're talking about things required in the Constitution here, I'm a constitutionalist in this regard as well. It requires us to thoroughly fund our public education system. We, as a legislature, as a state, failed to live up to that for a long time. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be sitting in this seat and casting votes at a time where we are making not only making up for those past cuts, but we are leveling the playing field between the have and have-not school districts. and when we are increasing school funding, our children's education to historic amounts. Our children deserve it, and so do our local property taxpayers, because let's face it, when Harrisburg steps away, as they did for years under Republican rule, property taxpayers at the local level pay the price.
School funding, William
I
Torbeck?
go back to 2005, and it was supposed to be the gambling was supposed to take cure-all for the property tax. Well, that's been over 17 years now, so I guess that out the window, right? So there's an 1874 law in the state constitution, the uniformity clause. In Pennsylvania, what you have is a commonwealth, and if you own an office building for $50 million, you pay 1.9% property tax. Somebody that owns a home for $50,000 pays the same amount of property tax as a $50 million building. So the formula right now is not there. Obviously, the property tax, because the people that get hurt the most are the lower income people. They get hurt the most. I'm all for transferring the property tax to a formula that the state income tax and the sales tax. I would be all for the formula. There's been studies there that showed that this formula can work, and Harrisburg just doesn't have the political will to do this. I mean, it's been 17 years. The political will has to be there. I don't see it as a Republican-Democrat thing when we have people on fixed incomes losing homes over the years because of this, and they can't afford to live in their homes. It's got to stop. And we have a formula that would work, and I think we should have to find a political will to do it. And I certainly would be more than happy to address this issue.
Kyle Mullins, we would like a rebuttal.
My last and final?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, just a couple things on this issue. My opponent is absolutely right. The property tax burden is, of course, a heavy burden on those on fixed income, our seniors, those families just trying to start out. I recognize this, and I actually I was able to cast a vote in favor of eliminating that burden. An amendment to a bill this last session that was only defeated by the Republican majority. I've been there to cast that vote, and I will be there again to propose and cast votes in favor of a responsible switch from our over-reliance on property taxes to a more stable revenue source. It can't be on sales taxes, because every time we have an ebb and flow in the economy, spending power ebbs and flows. How do you guarantee funding for our school children?
I would certainly want to,
Excuse me.
in an upper, may I?
Candidates, no,
Was that a question?
I'm afraid, yeah, we've used up our 3 rebuttals, and
Okay.
I need to move us,
Yes.
according to the clock, into our closing statements, at which time you may add that thought, and please do. So according to the drawing we had, we will have a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate. And William Torbeck, please go ahead with your closing statement.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And what I'd like to just tell everyone is that the 112 has been voting the same way for 50 years. It's the definition of insanity, voting the same over and over and expecting different results. I would go to Harrisburg as an independent voice. I've taken no PAC money. I would speak for the citizens first and foremost. We have an incumbent here that called people non-essential, locked businesses down, isolated people, masked you up. It should never happen again in a free society. And I just want to tell you how much it hurt seeing kids with masks on. It's just, over what? There's not been one congressional hearing regarding this pandemic. Not one. We're finding out about a mandatory vaccine that was not even ever supposed to stop transmission. We're finding this out. All the lies that came with this pandemic, and you called people non-essential. So I'd be an independent voice, I'd be a strong voice, and you'd know who your state representative is if I was going to represent you. And it's an honor to be here tonight. I can't thank you enough. The League of Women Voters, Kyle, it's been a pleasure to sit down and go over some issues with you in a friendly manner. So thank you all, and I hope to meet you all again.
All right. Thank you. Kyle Mullins, closing statement, please.
Thank you very much, Diana, and the League of Women Voters and the University of Scranton again, of course, for hosting us and allowing us to use this space, which is perfect for the robust conversation we were able to have. My opponent painted an extremely clear picture of the choice and the stakes in this election. This was a very valuable and worthwhile exercise here. And I appreciate the opportunity to analyze and display and have on display that stark contrast. We are reminded that we all deserve facts, not fear, dedication, not division, competency, and not conflict or conspiracy. We all deserve principled leadership, and I'm proud of how I was raised, of how we are raising our children, with the principles that helped enable me to get here. I believe in public service. I believe in our community, a community that blessed me with safe streets, good schools, and the chance to grow up and give back to that community. Community that includes my dad, who I know is chomping at the bit, not being here. He's suffering at home with ALS. He drives me to find research funding for rare diseases. To my mom, who is a caregiver by heart and is evidence of why we need more supports for our caregivers. And to Lauren, Connor, Caroline, and my sister for reminding me of why we need to protect the women in our life, to stand up for them, and to fight for equality for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
So we thank the candidates for giving of their time to engage with the voters, and thank you for watching this program co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the University of Scranton's Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service. Good night, everybody.